Hi, I'm BJ, and this is the Arcane Alienist Podcast. Well, after a couple of weeks off, I am back. I know it's been a while. I got some calls that have piled up, but I've also got a few session recaps to get through in this episode. And then I may not have much else to talk about for another week or two because everybody's kind of taking a break for the holidays from gaming. But also I've got some other family stuff coming up in January, so that may disrupt some of my gaming for the next few weeks as well. We'll see. We'll play it by ear and see how it goes. Anyway, so I want to start off with recapping the last three games I've been in. I don't have any new recaps on my OSE. We played the last recap I gave with them confronting ghouls is the last we're going to play until the new year. And I missed a session of the Salt Marsh game that I play in, so they're going to have to update me as to what happened, but we also haven't had a game since and probably will not be playing again until January. So on the list today, I've got my Storm King's Thunder 5th edition game that I run, a brief recap of our last session, and then the games I play in with Karl Rodriguez of the GMologist Presents. One is a Pathfinder 2e game, and the other is a Dungeon Crawl Classic game. So those will be the recaps. I'm going to go through those first, and then we'll get to this mounting list of calls from various callers. So not a whole lot happened in my last Storm King's Thunder game. As always, this will be kind of spoilery for anybody who doesn't want to know how this adventure works. We're at the end, coming up. Well, not at the very end, but the end is in sight, I think. After we'll probably have a few more sessions, then we'll wrap it up and start over with something else. But they had left off where they had uncovered the plot of the Blue Dragon Emerith to sow discord in the court of the Storm Giants, and conspired to have the Queen murdered, and that the King is missing, although she let slip that he is being held captive somewhere, but they were not able to find out from her where before she escaped. And so Sarissa, the princess who is the heir to the throne, has asked the party to go find out what has happened to her father, King Hecaton. Meanwhile, she will try to marshal all the forces she can to prepare to track Emerith down wherever she may be, even if it's in her lair, and put an end to everything. So the party had left the airship that they had been loaned by the Red Dragon Clouth. They had told it to go to Waterdeep while they transported to the Storm Giants' palace, which is under the Sea of Swords. And so they decided to check in. They asked the Storm Giants to send them back to Waterdeep so they can check in on their airship, even though they know the only clue they have is in the city of Yartar is the place they're trying to get to at a gambling establishment. They found on the what was discovered on the body of the Storm Giant's queen was a small token, which turns out to be a gambling token, essentially a poker chip or a casino chip. They used this gambling establishment in Yartar, but they go to Waterdeep first to check on their ship, and they decide they're going to go ahead and use the Harper teleportation network to actually go to Yartar, but they want to tell the crew of the airship to meet them there, head that direction, and they'll meet them and get there as quick as they can, and then they'll meet them there, but they want to get there as fast as they can. So they know that the place to try to make contact, if you're a Harper in town, one good place to make contact with other Harpers would be the Yawning Portal. So I got to describe the Yawning Portal, which if you don't know is a famous tavern and inn in Waterdeep that holds a passage to Undermountain, the dungeon of Undermountain. And for a gold piece, they'll open the portal, which is this big open well looking like structure in the middle of the tap room. And you can go down in there, and then if you make it back alive, you kind of ring a bell at the bottom, and they'll haul you back up. And so that's been a part of, I think, Realms lore for a long time. I think it goes back to the original early days of Forgotten Realms. So they're there. They learn a little bit about how it works, even though they don't have time to take a side quest in Undermountain. But they do manage to meet a Harper agent who through the signs and kind of hand signals and things like that, kind of comes up and talks to him. What you new in town? What are you doing? What's going on? What mission are you on? What's your objective right now? I was struggling for a famous Harper to just kind of throw in as an NPC, and I settled on Erlen Moonblade from the old Elf Shadow series. And so they know after she introduces herself, some of them know kind of her history. I figure she'd still be alive at the current time since she's a half elf. Even though she was introduced back in the TSR second edition AD&D era. But anyway, so she tells them where they can find the teleportation circle in the cemetery of Waterdeep and the passcode to get to it. So they go, they locate it, they're teleported to Yartar. They speak with the mages, both on the teleport they teleport from in Waterdeep, and the mage that keeps the teleportation circle for the Harpers in Yartar, and learn a little bit about the information that this golden goose coin they've got. It's on a gambling boat called the Grand Dam, and if it takes nightly cruises on the river where people gamble and drink and have a good time and socialize, and a lot of the prominent citizens of the town meet there. The owner of the ship himself is actually would like to. He's kind of angling to become the new Water Baron, which is sort of the leader of the city of Yartar. So players do what players do. They kind of go to investigate and just try to walk on the boat, and there's some guards there. They're like, no, you can't go and dress like that. Go find a tailor, go find a haberdasher, and get some appropriate attire. This is it's a fancy, classy establishment, right? And they take a minute to consider those options, and they decide to just walk onto the boat anyway. I mean, this is the problem when you get, I say problem, and I'm not speaking of all my players, but this is the challenge sometimes once you get sort of mid to high level player characters. They throw their weight around pretty easily with just ordinary guards and doormen and thugs and things like that. So they go, they've tried to talk their way on the boat. They try to, which ultimately results in a conflict with the guards. Of course, nobody's trying to kill each other. They're just trying to subdue one and each other. But one of the characters, Kalmar, who is a paladin warlock, kind of a shady character, he just misty steps onto the boat amid all the distraction and goes in and here we meet the guy that they're there to talk to find out, who's in charge of stuff and try to sort out. I think the players are being a little earnest. I think they're not holding much close to the vest at this point. They're being kind of open about why they're there and what they're looking for. I don't know if they're counting on their strength to make sure that if they step into any intrigue, they can just get their way out again. But it was fun. I mean, they had a fun altercation with these guards. Nobody, without killing them, they just dumping them into the water and knocking them out and making their way onto the boat. Of course, the boat hasn't left yet. It's still loading supplies for the evening's cruise. So I think the module was designed for them to do a Casino Royale kind of a bit where they come on in fancy clothes and hidden weapons and try to James Bond their way through the situation. But this will be interesting, too, to see how this takes it. So we kind of wrapped up there. We only had a short session, so we'll come back next time and see how they handle trying to deal with this guy, directly instead of trying to work their way through the casino up to meeting him, like I think was maybe the intention of the way the module was written. But hey, players never follow the script, particularly when you don't give it to them beforehand, right? So We had a pretty good time, but it was a short session, and we'll pick up again sometime in January and see how it goes from there. So that is a short recap for Storm King's Thunder. Hey, I forgot to say in the segment that you're about to hear, this is the Abomination Vaults Path for Pathfinder 2e, so there are some spoilers here. Again, if you haven't played through that, think you might, don't want to have it spoiled, there'll be some again, a little bit of spoilers as to the unfolding plot of this adventure path. So, you are forewarned. Okay, my next recap is for 2nd edition Pathfinder. This is a game run, as I mentioned before, by Karl Rodriguez. I'm playing a wizard named Dr. Eleazar. Other party members are Cromac, a dwarf paladin, Felbar, a gnome, oracle, and then a goblin fighter who specializes in archery, Goblin de la Hood, who's played by Jason Connerly of the Nerds RPG Variety Cast, although Jason couldn't make it to this particular game, so we kind of ran his character as an NPC and tried to treat him as much as we could with delicate with delicate gloves so that his character didn't get killed. Anyway, so we picked up where we left off. We had killed the Mifflet King and most of the Mifflets that are these sort of goblin-like, gremlin-like creatures inhabiting this ruined lighthouse, which is, there's kind of a keep or a manor house in addition to just the lighthouse. We had noted sort of a half-eaten kobold on the bank of the moat, and there's also a dead Mifflet they had been dangling down on a rope as kind of some kind of decoy or distraction. Anyway, we just dropped into the moat to see what happened, and we caught sight of this creature called a slurk. This big monstrous creature in the water that came up and snatched it. And we thought, well, we didn't feel like fighting that at the moment, so we backtracked and explored a little bit of searched some of the rooms we had come through to get to this point that we just kind of breezed through before, because prior we'd had a running battle from room to room with these Mifflets and really hadn't had time to stop and search. And then we began searching some of the rooms we had not gone into. And behind one, we found a room with this just like a refuse heap, and there's something moving in it. There's some dead bodies. And it turned out to be that what was moving around were two giant maggots, and they attacked us, and that proved to be a little tougher fight than we had hoped. We took some damage, but we managed to survive it. There was an adjacent door to this room where we could hear buzzing on the other side, and figured, well, giant maggots here probably means some kind of giant fly or other insect in the next room. So maybe we'll come back to that and explore a little more. We also managed to, we found another chamber as we went farther in, a big round chamber with, I believe there's some kind of writing or symbols on the floor. And as we're trying to figure that, I know I had noticed a secret passage in the wall, not in this room, but right before you got to the door to this room, I noticed a secret passage and was just about to say, hey guys, there's a secret passage out here. When this spectral thing just materializes in the room. And it's some kind of... I thought it was a banshee at first, but it's something else. But it started draining the life. It had this horrible attack that once it had attacked you, it could just drain blood from you. You do a kind of a blood drain, just sucking the life out of you again, round to round. So we fought with it a little bit. People started to get low hit points. Our Oracle, who was our main healer, dropped. So I walked up behind him. I was not in the room yet, and drug him outside. Cormac and Goblin were fighting with it. But again, it wasn't seeming like it was getting close to going down, and we were getting hurt more and more. So we decided to just book it out of there and go back to town and heal up and regroup and resupply and come back. What we did also find was that we figured after we kind of got out of the castle and recalled that this group of local heroes called the Rose Guard had previously gone in here in the past and defeated an evil witch named Belcara, and this has got to be her spirit. We also noticed that there was kind of illumination about her that seemed similar to what was described as this old abandoned lighthouse that had sat there for years empty, suddenly lit up one night. And we're thinking that it was her that did this. This was the same kind of, she was getting off a similar sort of visible aura as to the way the light was described. And so someone or something must have awakened her from her sleep. The kind of creature she is Karl said, is kind of a haunt, as we were kind of putting two and two together. And it would have been bound to that spot by some sort of painful, traumatic memory, which, if it's truly Belcara, is probably the memory of being killed by this previous adventuring party. But what woke her up, all of a sudden, we don't know. So we'll have to go back and deal with her spirit and try again. So, again, that's just kind of a short recap. It was a bit of a dungeon crawl, ending in a failed boss fight, I guess. We'll have to come back and finish it next time. So that's kind of what happened with the Pathfinder game. So, and again, we haven't played since. Probably we'll regroup here in a week or so after everybody gets through the holidays. All right, my last recap for the show and for the year is a recap of our last Dungeon Crawl Classics. I had missed the previous session. So in the previous session, they had continued to just explore the first level of this sort of ruined castle that we've been slowly trying to get a foothold on, which has been ruled by a coven of 3 hags. We've killed 2 of the hags. We know they've got some trolls that they've been using. We feel like they're keeping them down in the lower level, at least in the dungeon, or at least the big one is down there because we've had a brief encounter with him before. And the remaining hag has sort of barricaded her and her minions up on the top level and regrouping, and we don't know if they're about to come down and get us or if they're just waiting to see if we come up, or that's all we know right now. While I was out, they found some more treasure. They found a cauldron, which we in this session learned is a cauldron that sort of creates treasure. If you put a little bit of treasure in it and leave it, it'll start to multiply the treasure. The longer you leave it, the more it'll create. So, throw a gold piece in there and just wait, and eventually you'll have several gold pieces. You wait longer, it'll just continue to pile up. Which that was pretty cool. We really didn't have any combat in this. We explored the rest of the few remaining rooms and really just found more kind of weird magic items and we found some gems. We found some treasure. We found yet another cauldron. This one seems to be you can make items with it. You can forge if you mold an item out of clay and put it in the cauldron, it will turn it into a real version of that item. So we might have a way to make some. We'll have to check it out to see how much mundane equipment and how much magic item. Although I think the implication is there'll be something magical or wondrous about the items the cauldron creates. So you create a sword out of clay and fire it in a kiln and then put it in the cauldron, and you might get a magical sword out of the deal. So that was pretty cool. We went up the stairs looking for a safe place to rest. We found a room with 3 tapestries that appeared to be portals into some kind of pocket dimensions or other dimensions. One of them appeared to be the laboratory of a wizard, and I decided as the cleric of a god of puzzles and mysteries, I was going to go through these portals. People weren't real keen on accompanying me, so everybody stood guard for the first 2 anyway. I went into the first one looked like some kind of a wizard's study, so I went in and looked around, was able to swipe some potions off the table. and then also found a hat that it's a wizard's hat, but any spellcaster can use it, so I can use it as well as a cleric. And what it does is it gives me a bonus to my spellcasting rolls because this is DCC, so I got to roll every time I do anything magical. But it also gives me access to all the cantrips. And I don't know if there are cantrips in DCC. This is a magic item that Karl pulled in from Dungeons and Dragons. So he basically just said, go to the SRD for 3.5 D&D, and it basically gives you access to all the cantrips. And we'll work out the details and mechanics of that later if we need to. So pretty cool spellcaster's hat. So I think Jason Connerly, again, playing in this game as well, who's playing the wizard, passed on the hat, so I'll keep it for me right now. We also found a sage. Found that you can go in and there's a sage sitting near this waterfall. Again, you kind of walk into this tapestry and you're in this dimension. And you have a limited number of questions. So rather than waste all my questions with the sage, once I kind of figured out the game and also figured out he's not going to give very straight answers, they're going to be kind of in riddles, go back out and confer with everybody else that we can go in and ask a series. Let's think about the questions we want to ask him. The third tapestry showed kind of a desert canyon, and there were cat's eyes in that one. And what that turned out to be in this cat tapestry was, I walked in there, and there are all these cats, the cats could talk to us, and the cats talked about this is called the Great Eastern Desert. There's a forest. If you travel, eventually you'll get to this forest. And beyond the forest is the nation of Nar. It's a great city there. They said it's full of wicked people that can consort with demons. And so we don't necessarily want to. We think there's something familiar about that. We can't put our finger. I can go back and confer with the rest of the party, and we make sort of intelligence checks, history checks, and something about that sounds familiar, like we've heard of it. So maybe that is, again, is that a portal back to our world, or are we just in another place on our world that none of us have heard of, and this is just a gate to somewhere on our home world? Still some mysteries to be discovered there. But one of the cats comes back with us. And what we find is this cat, Jinx, when he comes back with us, once he crosses out of the cat realm, he can't talk anymore. So obviously he's intelligent enough to, has sort of human level intelligence, but he can't talk to us. And that was a really fun, Karl did a great job in this one of responding to my questions. Someone went through there with me though. Was it I believe it was Otto the dwarf. He came through me. And so responding, if you imagine how cats could talk, the kind of questions they would answer from a cat's perspective on what interests them, what they think is important compared to what humans think is important. It was pretty funny. So we had a good role-playing time with that. But we'd also discovered a torture chamber with a skeleton bound to it, and when we stepped up to the skeleton, a spirit appeared, and we were about to wrap up and say, let's pick up with this fight next time, and I thought, well, give us a second, let's maybe talk to it. So, who are you? We find out this is Sir Moray. He was the chamberlain for Zorak, or the castellan for Zalrak, who's this warlord that had at one point been in command of this castle. Castle, if I remember how to pronounce this, Castle Sulaf, I believe is the way it's pronounced. It's changed hands several times. We've pieced this together as we've gone through the castle and gotten clues from tapestries and paintings and fragments of writings that this castle has been changed hands several times, and something ill always befalls whoever claims the castle for themselves. And oh yeah, I forgot we had found the most interesting artifact of all. I skipped ahead. There's a throne that we found with a skull, with a skull on it. And it turns out the skull is a sentient entity called the Guardian, which is some kind of, it's kind of like a demon, but it's lawful in nature. Whether that's more of a devil, or how that fits into the law, neutrality, chaos, alignment paradigm of DCC. It's interesting, because you would expect something that's a demon to be chaotic, but as it describes kind of its nature and what it is, it's lawful, but it's also some kind of demon, or at least some sort of otherworldly spirit, maybe being bound into the skull and forced to fill a certain role, forces it to be lawful when it wasn't before. I don't know. Anyway, so the Guardian is kind of like this factotum thing. It can tell us all these things, but it also, I think, Jason's kind of carrying it around, and it can float and it can talk to us. But in combat, it can absorb a spell and has a potential to redirect it back at the attacker. So it's useful in combat, but it also just seems to be able to tell us about kind of what's going on and give us bits of arcane lore. So it helps us fill in some of the gaps about Castle Soleil. And that, again, there was this Zorak, who's later on we find the remains of his castle and up there. But it fell to a some sort of female. Seems like a more heroic warlord, and I think we had encountered her body earlier in the adventure during our fight with the cloaker that almost produced a TPK. And a fragment of an explorer's journal who had come looking for her. And so we some of her personal items may be here there was a reference to, we think, a magical sword. And then she lost the castle to the hags. Now the hags seem poised to lose it to us if we're successful, but then the idea is, according to the Guardian, this castle is cursed, so if we claim it for ourselves, bad fortune will befall us. And again, the talking statues we've encountered in past sessions have also told us to go away, that only death and misfortune awaits us here. So we decided to end the session with actually in the torture chamber. we know we're up on the second floor now, where we think that the remaining hag is, but we found this sort of room that was empty, and one of the doors had been plastered over and walled off. This torture chamber doesn't seem to have been accessed by anybody, so the ghost of the Castellan was fine with us as long as we were not allies of this person who had come and taken the castle from his lord Zorak, who then chained him there and left him to die. And so he will stand watch while we try to rest up, because we were still down some hit points, and a couple of us are still down some, not constitution. What is it in DC? Endurance. We're down some constitution that we need to recover as well. So we did level up, and I managed to get a spell that can restore actual ability point loss. So maybe we can rest a little while, and I can get the party as the cleric in the party, get everybody back up to close to full strength again before we try to have our final confrontation with the last hag. But then there may be a battle with whatever's waiting down in the dungeons and the lower, below as well, if we want to fully clear out this castle and learn all its mysteries and claim all its treasure, and then decide whether we want to risk claiming it for ourselves, or maybe walk through a tapestry and try to find another way home. Anyway, that is it for Dungeon Crawl Classics. I'm sure you can hear recaps of this session with on Jason's podcast and Karl's as well. That's the Nerds RPG Variety Cast with Jason Connerly, and the Geomologist Presents with Karl Rodriguez. So be sure and check out their podcast. Yeah, check out their podcast anyway, regardless of whether you want to hear recaps. They have good shows. All right, let's take some calls now. Here we go.
Oh, BJ, you're probably done talking about saving throws now, but coming back to D&D a few years back, I was pretty impressed with the way they'd cleaned up saving throws, attached them to just basically attribute checks of a kind. Different classes get to add their proficiency bonus to different attributes, and of course that proficiency bonus goes up with levels, and you also get a chance at certain levels to bump up your attributes as well. So you can kind of focus on your strengths, or you can kind of backfill your weaknesses. I don't know, just what made sense for me, and I haven't got to memorise obscure, strange names for saving throws, which I never did like that much, although colourful, I guess.
That was Collin Green of the Spike Pit podcast and YouTube channels. Thanks for the call, Colin. It's always good to hear from you. Yeah, I think you're speaking to what I think is a certain elegance of the core of 5th edition. I know 5th edition is not everybody's, not everybody's cup of tea, but because it changes a lot of stuff from, it is slow. It doesn't change that much from 4th. Well, it does change a lot from 4th edition. 5th edition looks like a radical departure if you're mostly familiar with basic and AD&D, but if you look at the progression through 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, you can see where they get to where they're at. But I'm kind of going off on a separate tangent here. I think there is a certain elegance to the way 5th edition handles. If you're going to have a core mechanic, they have really put in a core mechanic, and a lot of the complexity of 5th edition really comes from the sheer number of options characters and creatures have when they go to do something on their turn with the various spells and abilities and things like that. But as far as that core mechanic, and then you've done some episodes on this, which I really have enjoyed talking about. You just got your ability check, and everything flows from rolling a d20, incorporating one of your abilities, against a DC. You may do it with advantage or disadvantage. You may or may not add a proficiency bonus based on the type of character and their background and training. That to me is it's a beautifully simple system. And then it gets really complicated when you start adding in all the situational rules and abilities, and then the kind of the way the system is designed to have the simple core mechanic, and then you get all these exception-based things where people can sort of tinker with that. But yeah, it does. It saves you some mental space from not having to, it's just ability checks. It's not a new thing with a separate set of names and a separate set of parameters and a separate mechanic. And with one you want to roll high, on one you want to roll low, and there's no conversions or anything like that. So I think it's a kind of a neat way to do it. And as I think I'd mentioned before, even with a single saving throw, if you factor in the ability of, based on your class and level, you've got a target for a saving throw. But based on what you're saving against, we're going to look at which ability you're using, and if you've got a bonus or penalty based on high or low scores, you'll factor that into your roll against that saving throw target number. But yeah, it's good to hear from you, Colin. Thanks for the input. And I think we, as usual, we see eye to eye on a lot of stuff when it comes to 5th edition D&D. So thanks again.
Hey, BJ Jason here. By a Hobbesian role player, I was referring to Jason Hobbs of Random Scree and Hex Talk and Hobbs and Friends fame. Jason Hobbs famously does not like to create characters. He does not consider character creation part of the game. And so when Karl mentioned that Amy isn't big into character creation, that's why I termed her a Hobbesian role player. As far as the idea of renaming saving throws, they kind of did that in 3rd edition. They condensed them down to 3 and renamed them. And I guess if you need them to be whatever, the names to make sense, you can do that. But there's nothing wrong with saying, oh, there's a pretty dangerous trap. You're trying to avoid this scythe blade swing across, say versus Dragon's Breath, and just doing that as a shorthand. That works as well. Hey, BJ, really enjoyed the latest episode. Look forward to your future episodes, especially when you do your deep dives into dwarves and hobbits and the psychology of those races. So that'll be interesting. Or species, I guess. So I will talk to you later. Take care.
Thanks, Jason. That was Jason Connerly of the Nerds RPG Variety Cast. I think thanks for clearing up what you mean about Hobbesian role player. Of course, that's from a message you left a couple of episodes back, and telling me to ask Karl Rodriguez what that means, and Karl was like, I don't know. So you're referring to somebody who doesn't feel like character creation is essential, and I guess would rather just go with a pre-generated character or something you whip up really quick and not spend a lot of time on character creation. And I don't know, would that include things like the sort of the big efforts at min-maxing and optimizing and all the decision points you have to make a character in a more complicated, crunchy system, like you do in a lot of the modern D&D and Pathfinder types of things, where you have to put some thought into it, if or you can anyway. Maybe you don't have to, but the game certainly invites you to do that on some level. So, we've kind of looked at saving throws in this discussion between my comments and callers' comments and responses to other callers' comments from a lot of different directions. And I think pick your poison. No pun intended on saving versus poison. Well, maybe I did intend a pun there, but it works. I think the saving throws always work in every system of D&D. They work well for the system they're in, and there's different ways of monkeying with it and playing with it and looking at different elements of the game, or of the way they work, depending on which version of the game you're playing. But yeah, I guess you could use those old names like, well, a scythe blade is swinging at you, and that means you're trying to get out of the way of something dangerous headed towards you. That's kind of like dodging a dragon's breath. So that makes sense. You just have to apply logic. If what is this of the 5 saves? What is this most like? I guess the one that always I think confuses a lot of people is, how is the magic that comes from a wand different from the magic that comes from a spell, particularly when you're using a wand? But why would you have different saves for those two different types of magic? And I guess it's up to each, because those come from original D&D basic and AD&D. I guess it's up to the dungeon master in their own campaign to decide why that is. What are the metaphysics of the world we're imagining right now, and it can vary from DM to DM and game to game. So, so that second call, I'm gonna start working on gathering my thoughts on dwarves and halflings and hobbits and such, and do some more of those deep dives into the outlook of again, kind of the typical, basic version of a character of that species or that race. So look for more of those in the future. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and thanks again for the calls.
Hey BJ, it's Joe Salvador. Hope all is well. Just wanted to call out and say that I'm really enjoying your setting-oriented episodes. The elf episode was very interesting. I like how you bring everything together, and I'd like to hear some more of those. And like Jason, I'd like to hear the dwarves, or really whatever you want to talk about. I'm creating settings for myself right now. I'm doing one for Reaver, and kind of as like a side project. I'm just working on my own campaign setting. Like listening to you talk it out kind of gets me some ideas, and it's helpful. Anyway, keep it up. Always appreciate it. Cheers.
That was Joe Salvador of Raven God Games. You guys should check out some of the stuff he's published. It's good stuff, and I'm looking forward to Reaver. He mentioned Reaver, and I've listened a little bit to Karl and Jason talk about some of the play tests they've done on it. So looking forward to that. Good to hear from you, Joe. It's always good to get compliments on world building, particularly from someone else who does world building. So thanks a lot for that. And I will do some more on other races, as I mentioned in my reply to Jason a little bit earlier in the episode. So I'll start collecting my thoughts on that, and hopefully here in the next couple of months have some more deep dives into the mindset of other types of creatures and species that you find in D&D, but I think particularly leading off with dwarves and halflings, since they're the other two main non-human species that players tend to get their hands on and enjoy playing, and also, of course, naturally have the longest history in D&D along with elves. So take care, Joe, and once again, thanks for the call.
Hey, BJ, I think it's pretty cool your origins on in your world. I've heard. It just reminds me again. I guess connection of Knowles with Yanganu specifically. I guess Knowles is the longest, right? I guess in the traditional AD&D lore, but Yanganu, I kind of definitely in past games, a pseudo war story. I've used Yanganu. I think I've used Yanganu in multiple AD&D games. I don't know why. Maybe it's that three-headed flail that he wields. But yeah, I used him in a BX game at the end of a dungeon, and not knowing quite how AD&D worked. Or yeah, I guess with AD&D, we have the AD&D Monster Manual, but BX rules. And then the second time I used Yanganu was during the transition between AD&D 1 and AD&D 2 in the Forgotten Realms and the Avatar War. And one of the rangers, I had him in this big forested area. I believe it's called the High Forest. And it was Gnolls versus Elves, and the Avatar of Maliki was fighting the Avatar of Yanganu, and the players were on the Elf Maliki side, and one of the players, interestingly, became the consort of Maliki, one of the player characters, and the other players gave this player a hard time after that and forever. So, because we're in college and it's a college dudes game. Alright, thanks again for the stuff, the podcast, BJ, and talk to you soon.
That was Karl Rodriguez of the Geomologist Presents. I think he must have been recording in the car. There was a lot of background noise, so you may have to turn up the volume or hold your whatever device you're listening on up a little bit closer to kind of make out what he was saying there. But he was talking about, I had mentioned in my homebrew setting that both gnolls and ghouls are basically just bodies possessed by a demon, and that it was kind of an homage loosely to the Demon Prince. I have always pronounced it Yunogu, but Karl was pronouncing it Yaganu. I don't know if there's a canonical way of saying it. That's just my Okie drawl wants me to say it that way. but regardless of in kind of default D&D lore, Orcus, the Demon Prince of Undead, would of course rule over ghouls, but Yaganu kind of pays homage to Orcus, and so he's given a little bit of dominion over ghouls, even though he's primarily the patron of gnolls. That's not going on in the mythic world of Erd, but I thought it was a neat little connection when I was sort of trying to sort out sort of my own ecology and what niches each of the traditional kind of monsters and types of undead and types of humanoids fit into. And I kind of like the way it worked out there. And Karl's mentioned a couple times he's used that Demon Prince in campaigns. I will say I was 13 years old when I first encountered and fought Yaganu. It was sort of it was our first D&D characters in junior high school. None of us had the books. We were relying on my friend Brian, who was our first DM, to just sort of give us a kind of a dungeon or adventure of the week kind of set up, and I think he pumped our levels up quite a bit. He like advanced us quite a bit, and then just pitted us, basically go into a dungeon, and there he is trying to come from the abyss into the real world, and we have to fight him. I think we beat him. I think so. Of course, that was sort of a Monty Hall. And we were 13. It was a Monty Hall D&D campaign. We had all kinds of special abilities we weren't supposed to have based on our classes and races, and more magic items and potions than you probably should have been able to collect. But it was fun. That was our first epic fight in D&D. For me and my friends when we first got into D&D in junior high school. So yeah, you mentioned the 3-headed flail. Yeah, I remember facing that as a player. Anyway, thanks again as always for the calls, Karl. Take care. And that'll do it for this episode. Thanks everybody for listening. I want to thank my callers, Joe Salvador, Karl Rodriguez, Collin Green, and Jason Connerly. Appreciate you guys out there with your own contributions to the hobby. Thanks for you guys for listening, for calling. Thanks to everybody for listening. And I am dropping this. It is 1:43 a.m. on Christmas Day. So for all of you out there, Merry Christmas from me. If you don't celebrate Christmas, whatever holiday you celebrate this time of year or observe, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Solstice, whatever it may be, have a good one. Enjoy yourself. Take care. And just good wishes, good blessings, good thoughts to everybody out there. And I'll be back in the new year with some other stuff, of course. My son is just a few weeks shy of 13. I got to go put a couple of quick presents under the tree, but this will be the first time in a long time on Christmas that I've got to bed before 4 a.m. because, in years previous, up until the last couple of years, I've had, for most of his childhood, it was elaborate, setting up elaborate displays of gifts from Santa, and as he's gotten a little bit past that, I've still had to stay up assembling bicycles and electronics and other sorts of stuff. Mercifully, this year, I can just set the things out under the tree for him. He knows it's me and Mom, and I don't have anything fancy, and his tastes in gifts have gotten to the things where I don't have to assemble or put together and wrap and set up, like I said, displays, or, when we used to get him like sets of action figures, I'd pose them around the tree in poses, or if we'd get him tracks, we'd set those things up. So now he's just happy to have it there and be surprised by it in the morning. So yeah, I'm actually going to get to bed here probably just in about 15 or 20 minutes. So once again, whatever holiday you celebrate, enjoy yourself, take care of yourself. Peace out there to everybody, and I will be back in the near future. And that's it for this episode of The Arcane Alienist. I want to thank Dave Bone for the cover art that I use for the episodes. Check out ironseer.com. And the music is Come and Get It by Scott Holmes Music. Thank you for listening. Give me a call sometime through the Anchor app or at the Anchor website, and I'll be back in the future with another episode.